Airway inflammation doesn't usually arrive as a warning sign. It builds quietly, slowly, and without anything that feels dramatic. Most people imagine inflammation as something obvious: pain, swelling, sickness. But airway inflammation rarely announces itself that way. Instead, it blends into daily life. Breathing still works. Tests still look normal. Nothing feels urgent. Yet over time, breathing starts to feel heavier. Air feels sharper. You notice your chest more often. Energy dips sooner than it used to. Not enough to panic, just enough to adapt. And that's how it stays invisible. At first, the changes are easy to explain away. Bad sleep, stress, weather, seasonal air. You assume it's temporary. You don't think of inflammation because nothing hurts. So life continues. But the effort quietly increases. You take slightly shallower breaths. You pause more often. You avoid cold air without thinking. You sit instead of standing. Small adjustments that make breathing easier but also hide the underlying change. This is where frustration begins to form. You're doing normal things and wondering why they feel heavier. You try logical fixes. More rest, better posture, deep breathing, hydration. Sometimes they help. Sometimes they don't. The inconsistency is confusing. Because the real issue isn't a flare-up. It's accumulation. Airway inflammation often builds at a low level over long periods. Environmental exposure, dry air, allergens, stress, repeated irritation, none of them cause a crisis on their own. But together, they gradually change how airways behave. Tissue becomes slightly thicker. Sensitivity increases. Response time slows. Nothing closes. Nothing fails. But airflow becomes less smooth. And smoothness matters more than people realize. Healthy airways are flexible. They adapt instantly to temperature, movement, and oxygen demand. When inflammation builds, that flexibility fades. Breathing still happens, it just takes more effort. The real issue isn't blocked airways. It's resistant airways. That resistance doesn't show up clearly on tests because tests measure capacity, not comfort. They check whether air can move, not how hard your body has to work to move it. So you're told everything looks fine. And you're left wondering why it doesn't feel fine. Over time, that gap creates doubt. You question your perception. You assume you're just getting older. You lower expectations without realizing it. But airway inflammation doesn't need to be severe to matter. It only needs to be persistent. Think of it like friction in a hinge. The door still opens. It just doesn't swing freely anymore. You don't notice at first because you compensate. But eventually, the resistance becomes part of the experience. That's what's happening in the airways. Understanding this changes how you interpret your body. It explains why symptoms feel vague, why progress feels slow, and why quick fixes rarely stick. The real issue isn't weakness. It's chronic, low-level resistance. Once you see that, the confusion eases. You stop searching for dramatic explanations and start understanding gradual change. If you want a structured breakdown that explains how airway inflammation develops over time and how it affects daily breathing comfort, there's a practical framework linked in the description. And if you value calm, grounded explanations that focus on understanding rather than fear, you can subscribe for more long-form breakdowns like this. Airway inflammation doesn't announce itself. It blends in. And that's exactly why so many people miss it.